Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It's this really fascinating part of the Bible.
It really is.
And what's amazing is how it pulls these like huge lessons from ancient history
Mm-hmm.
and connects them straight to everyday stuff.
Mm.
You know, like eating and drinking. It really shows how even simple choices link up with big spiritual ideas.
Absolutely. It kind of dismantles this idea that faith is over here and real life is over there. It uses really concrete examples.
And the whole point seems to be figuring out why these specific things were written down for us.
Right. Exactly. It's not just history for history's sake. It starts by taking us way back.
Right, straight into the desert with the Israelites after Egypt.
Yeah.
And it kicks off highlighting some, well, frankly, incredible spiritual advantages they had.
Yeah, right at the start. The text paints this picture, divine protection, provision. It says they were all under the cloud, all passed through the sea. And it even calls this being baptized into Moses, which is interesting phrasing. Then, they all ate the same spiritual food, drank the same spiritual drink.
Spiritual food and drink.
Yeah, from a spiritual rock that accompanied them. And then the text just drops this bombshell. That rock was Christ.
Wow. So direct contact with God's power, with Christ himself, basically.
You'd think they had it made, right? Every advantage.
Exactly. But then, like, the very next sentence hits hard. Despite all that, God was not pleased with most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Their bodies were scattered over the desert. That's quite a contrast. What happened?
And that's the core question the text wants us to ask. It wasn't about lacking privilege, it was their response. And it's super clear why this history lesson is here.
Okay.
It says, these things occurred as examples to keep us from setting our hearts on evil things as they did.
Examples for us.
Explicitly. And it repeats it. Written down as warnings for us. This isn't just trivia, it's a direct warning passed down through millennia.
Okay, so what were the specific failures, the examples we need to watch out for?
Well, the first one mentioned ties right back to that eating and drinking thing. Idolatry. Describes them sitting down to eat and drink, basic activities, right? But then getting up to indulge in pagan revelry. It shows how fast physical stuff can slide into spiritual betrayal.
That's a really potent link. Food, drink, idolatry.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Sexual immorality is next. And the consequence mentioned is just chilling. 23,000 of them died in one day.
23,000 in a single day. The stakes were unbelievably high.
Absolutely. Then there's testing the Lord.
Testing the Lord. How so?
Well, the result was being killed by snakes. So you could maybe interpret that as, pushing God's patience, taking his grace for granted, acting without faith.
Right. Presuming on him.
Kind of. And the last one mentioned is grumbling, complaining.
Which honestly sounds maybe less severe than the others.
You might think so, but the text says they were killed by the destroying angel for it.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, it presents grumbling as a really serious lack of faith, a kind of rebellion in itself. So those four. Idolatry, immorality, testing God, and grumbling. Those are the specific pitfalls highlighted.
It's a really stark reminder.
Yeah.
Lessons learned the hard way, preserved for us. And this whole section wraps up with this really direct warning to the reader, doesn't it?
It does. After listing all those failures, it just says, so if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's aimed right at us, right? Challenging any feeling of, oh, that wouldn't happen to me. It connects our potential complacency directly to their fate.
That feels like a necessary wake-up call,
Yeah.
but then almost immediately the tone shifts a bit.
Yeah.
Verse 13, it offers this incredible hope right after the warning about falling. It talks about temptation.
Yes, verse 13 is so foundational, isn't it? It starts by just normalizing it. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man.
Okay, so you're not alone in it.
Exactly. It immediately says, look, what you're facing, it's the human condition. It's not some unique, super-powered attack just on you.
That's reassuring in itself. And then it brings God into it.
Crucially. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. That's just a massive promise, isn't it?
Yeah, that God himself puts a limit on the pressure.
A divine limit. But it's not just about limitation, is it? There's more.
There's a way out.
Exactly. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it.
So not just grit your teeth and bear it, but an actual escape route.
Yeah, or maybe a path through it, a way to navigate it successfully, provided by God himself. It suggests that there are active steps we can take.
That's a vital piece of hope right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so after that assurance, the chapter seems to circle back to that first warning, idolatry.
It does. Therefore, my dear friends, flee from idolatry. And this leads into this really deep idea of participation or fellowship.
Participation. How does it explain that?
Well, it uses examples they'd know really well. First, communion, the cup of thanksgiving, the bread that we break. It identifies these as participation in the blood of Christ and participation in the body of Christ. Sharing in the elements means sharing in Him.
And it connects that sharing to their unity, right?
Yeah.
As a group.
Absolutely key. It says, because there is one loaf, we, who are many, are one body. So taking communion isn't just vertical with Christ, it's horizontal with each other.
Makes sense.
Then it brings up Israel again. Those who eat the sacrifices participate in the altar. It's showing this principle. Sharing in the ritual connects you to the spiritual reality behind it.
Okay, so that sets up the whole issue with meat sacrificed to idols, which was apparently a big deal in Corinth.
A huge deal. And the text tackles it head on. It asks, do I mean then that a sacrifice offered to an idol is anything, or that an idol is anything?
Right, acknowledging their point that idols aren't actually gods.
Exactly. And it agrees. It says no. The idol itself is nothing. It's wood, stone, whatever.
There's always a but.
There's the crucial distinction. The text says, okay, the idol is nothing, but the sacrifice is offered. They aren't just going nowhere. They're offered to demons, not to God.
Whoa. Okay, so the idol's fake, but the spiritual power behind the worship? That's real, and it's demonic.
That's the insight. And because of that spiritual reality, the prohibition is absolute. I do not want you to be participants with demons.
So if eating sacrifices means participation,
Then eating idol sacrifices means participation, fellowship, communion with demons.
we're stark.
Incredibly stark. It lays it out. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too.
One or the other.
You cannot have a part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons. It's presented as totally incompatible. You choose where your participation lies.
And it ends that section with some really challenging questions, doesn't it? Almost provocative.
Yeah. Are we trying to arouse the Lord's jealousy? Are we stronger than He? Basically asking, are you trying to make God angry? Do you seriously think you can mess with demonic forces and come out on top stronger than God? It really hammers home the danger.
Okay, so warnings from history, the reality of participation. Then the chapter seems to shift gears a bit towards principles for how to actually live this out.
Right. It introduces this phrase, which probably was a bit of a Corinthian slogan, everything is permissible.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be misused easily.
And the text immediately fences it in. It says, okay, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. And again, everything is permissible, but not everything is constructive.
So just because you can doesn't mean you should. It has to be helpful, build things up.
Exactly. Christian freedom isn't just license. It has a purpose. It's about benefit, construction. And then it adds another massive principle guiding that freedom.
Which is?
Nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others.
So it's not just about my rights, my freedom.
No, it fundamentally shifts the focus. How does my exercise of freedom impact you? Am I seeking your well-being?
Okay, so these principles, permissible but beneficial, constructive, and seeking others' good, how do they actually work? So the chapter gets practical again, right, with the meat example.
Yes, back to the meat market. Very practical. First rule, eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience.
Don't overthink it in the market.
Pretty much. And the reason given is huge. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. God owns it all, so the food itself isn't inherently unclean just because of where it might have been before. For your conscience, it's fine.
Okay, market's clear. What about, say, dinner at an unbeliever's house?
If you go, the same general rule applies. Eat whatever's put before you without raising questions of conscience. Again, focus on your freedom, God's creation. Don't make it weird unless you have to.
Unless you have to. There's the exception.
This is where the other person's good principle really kicks in. But if anyone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it.
The moment someone flags it as sacrifice meat, you stop.
You stop, and the reason is key.
It's not for your own sake,
Right.
because you already know the idol is nothing.
Exactly. The text clarifies. It's for the sake of the man who told you, and for conscience sake. And then it underlines it. The other man's conscience, I mean, not yours.
So your freedom gets put on pause because of how it might affect the other person's understanding or conviction.
That's the idea. Your action could confuse them, make them think you endorse the idol, or maybe lead them to violate their own conscience if they think participating is okay because you are.
That feels complicated. I mean, why should my freedom be limited by someone else's hangups? The text seems to get that tension.
It absolutely does. It includes those questions that voice that very frustration. For why should my freedom be judged by another's conscience? And if I take part with thankfulness, why am I denounced? It acknowledges that this feels restrictive. But the underlying principle seems to be that love and preventing someone else from stumbling spiritually sometimes takes priority over exercising a right you technically have, especially if exercising it could harm their faith journey.
Okay, that moves beyond just food rules into like deep relational responsibility. And this all seems to build towards the chapter's grand finale, the sort of ultimate command.
Yeah, this is the principle that pulls everything together. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God.
Whatever you do, everything.
Everything. Eating, drinking, working, relaxing, choosing what to watch, how you speak. It all gets filtered through this ultimate purpose. Does this bring honor to God? Does it reflect his character?
And that purpose, glorifying God, isn't just an internal thing, is it? It connects straight back to others.
Right away. The next line is, do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the Church of God. Glorifying God means being intensely aware of how our lives impact everyone around us inside and outside the church.
Wow. Okay. And the very last verse sums up the motivation behind all this.
It uses Paul, the author, as
Yeah.
the example. Even as I try to please everybody in every way.
Yeah.
Not people-pleasing in a weak sense, but...
Aiming for their good.
Exactly. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many so that they may be saved. That's the ultimate driver. Seeking the well-being and salvation of others fuels the desire to glorify God in everything and to be careful not to cause stumbling.
So this whole chapter, 1 Corinthians 10, has taken us from these, really serious warnings from history through temptation, spiritual participation, the nuances of freedom and responsibility, practical stuff like food, all leading to this huge, all-encompassing goal. Do everything for God's glory and for the good and salvation of others.
It really challenges us, doesn't it, to see that our choices, even seemingly small ones like what we eat or drink, they actually echo with spiritual significance. They're about participating with God or not, and they deeply affect the people around us.
So maybe a final thought for all of us listening, that core principle, doing everything for the glory of God, just consider that. How might applying that filter, really thinking about it, change maybe just one specific choice you face this week?